Okay, excellent. So, okay, guys. So it was a little bit of a slow day there till the end, and so this morning, one of the things we talked about was that we were opening right in the middle of balance at 1804, and we've been trading. We've been trading consistently in a sideways market, and if we go all the way back to last Wednesday, when we look at, and let me open this real quick. So and it is running just a hair slow, but it should come up soon enough. There we go. Okay, so if we look at this, we've been trading absolutely sideways with value basically from that's roughly 1806.50 down to the bottom of balance would be this 1801.50. And if you look, we closed just below balance, okay, but still no real damage has been done. We closed within this 1798 and a half that we have been rejecting from each time we've come down. So on Friday we talked about having that we were set to move out of balance, right? And we did that. And I explained that when we move out of balance, that doesn't mean that we will go vertical or that it'll hold. All it means is we moved away from value, which we did, and then we had failed range extension, and we moved back into the value area for the close. Today, actually, we did break. We did have an extension out of value, right? We opened, we tested to the upside, we failed, and then at the end of the day, we got sell pressure and closed out of value. So we have had a move out of balance. The only question about that is now whether we get any follow through. And in order to get some follow through, what we need to do is get below 1798 and hold. Ideally, we would gap out of here tomorrow, then come back up for rejection and move lower. So that was the first thing that I wanted to cover, was that we have moved out of value, and that was one of the things I was expecting to happen. So there was a couple of setups. Some I did very well, some I didn't do quite as well in. If we look at the chart, this morning we didn't quite make it up to the white zone, and we could not get a strong rotation out of the open either. The first 5 minutes, first 10 minutes, we had no attempt at gap fill, right? And there was basically a tug of war going out of the gate. If you look, I'm going to bring over the NQ chart real quick. On NQ, NQ came in and it actually did attempt gap fill, and then responsive buyers came in and pushed up. A lot of that was due to the Amazon and their very unique. They're going to send, I guess, little mechanical helicopters to deliver your packages the same day. And so while it was very interesting, it did not generate the follow through that we needed. The other thing that's a concern overall is the inability on the ES. If we look at the NQ versus the ES, right, on the right, we've been put up in one timing this entire way up. So what does one timing mean? And okay, so if it gets too complicated, I'll slow down because I know I throw a lot of terms out. And if you have a question, okay, hold on, viewer 8. Hold on one second. Okay, guys, if you don't, hold on a second. If you don't have audio, look at screen now. I will show you how to get it. Okay. If you go to audio right here, okay, I'm going, and that is how you get audio. And so hopefully everyone will be able to hear clearly now. At any rate, I'm going to move on. So in NQ, we've been one-timing all the way up. One-timing simply means on the market profile that we have, hold on a second. I apologize, guys. We'll work this out in just a second. Okay. I was trying to demonstrate there's a couple of people who could not hear via the audio, and so I was trying to demonstrate how you get audio on there. I also attached the link via StockTwits and Twitter, so hopefully everyone will get it. I'm going to go ahead and move on here. So one timing simply means we have not been able to penetrate the prior day's low, and you'll see we've been doing that for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days in a row. This is the first day we've traded below the prior day's low. Generally, what that means is when that occurs and we're not in balance, which we are not on NQ, right, is that there's a potential for a change, but that there is not absolutely a change. There's not absolutely a change will occur, but there's a potential. So let me give you an example of how that could change going forward. Right? If you look here, when we were moving up, right, this is the firm we traded. This day was the first day we traded below the prior day's low in this whole string of trades, right? And what that ended up doing was it set us up to trade lower the following day, but then the characteristic changed. We didn't go from straight up to down, but we did go through a long series here of balance, right? Whereas before, if we opened near the lows and we were closing near the highs consistently on NQ, this change right here, this kind of gave us a heads up right here that the character of the market, okay, thank you, guys. I apologize for the pointer. Okay, so what I'm talking about here was that this is called one timing. All this underneath here is one timing. Thank you, Jay, by the way. This is one timing where we do not we do not test below the prior day's low. Okay, the first time that we did that was right here. We traded below this prior day's low. All that tells us at that point is that there's a potential for a change going forward. Okay, if you look at this, right, what happened now is we did trade lower the following day, but we obviously did not roll over. But instead of having this straight up action where you could have bought on the open, essentially, pretty much close to every single day, and we closed near the high, right? That's really cool when that happens. Doesn't happen a lot. So now, after this little period, we did not roll over and go down, but we did go through an entire period here of sideways consolidation, right, where we imbalance. And you have to change strategies when you're in balance. Instead of trading from opens, right, and then closing at the high of the day, what you end up with is you open and you generally have two-sided trade on both sides. And the easiest way to trade that is from the outside back in. And you'll notice that many days we still closed near the highs, but we had big rotations lower first. Okay. The reason why that's important is because if we go look now, let me get rid of these lines. And I'm sorry these are a little rough. I'm just getting used to doing these live. And so I am learning as I go, just something else, right? So we just got through an entire period here of having no days trade below prior day's lows. We can all see that, 7 in a row, right? So today's the first day that we traded below the prior day's low, and I believe actually we closed back into into the prior day's range. Okay, so now just like before, all I'm looking for is a change in character, not necessarily a reversal and going down. You have to consider that no real damage was done today, right? All we did was trade below the prior day's low, and we'll look to see tomorrow, if we get a gap down, and that's where I was coming with this. If we get down tomorrow, right, We had the low. We gap down, let's say down to the 1794 area. No idea if we were going to gap down or not, right? A very logical possible outcome of that. So if we were to open down at 1794, okay, and then rejection at the back as we push up into yesterday's range or today's range, right? And then rejection, that would be the ideal setup, right? That would be the best. Now, it doesn't have to be the only setup we could open. Get rid of this. We could simply open up, right? And reject and come down. We could open flat, trade sideways and consolidate again, right? And then have sellers come in. Okay? Or the third option is if there's some reason, some type of news that would push us down, right? Most days, if you go back and look when we started this ramp, okay, on most days what would occur is one of two things. We would open either up or flat. We would come all the way down, okay? And then in the afternoon, we would get a significant rotation up, usually 5 to 10 points. And then the afternoon was either a balance. And some days we pushed back near the lows, but most days we did not close anywhere near the lows. We usually closed in the middle of the range. And we could even have a push all the way up and then come down and actually have a down day, but not a significant down day. Again, no damage has occurred, and we really would have to get under 1770 at this point before we said, well, wait a minute, we're in danger of actually having some damage. So let's look at how this, now that we've gone through that scenario, let's go and look at how today unfolded. And I'm really learning to hate this software here. Okay. So this morning we opened. We couldn't push up into the white zone. We already saw that NQ did hold and actually made a push up. And one of the clues there, okay, we kind of had contrasting and contradicting information, right? NQ was pushing, but ES wasn't following. At the same time, we weren't pushing down towards gap fill either. And so the best thing to do in this area right here was to do absolutely nothing. Okay, now if you took the short and you made money, fantastic. It obviously worked out. But again, my focus is not on where can I attain the most trades. My focus is on where can I attain the highest odds trades, and that's always within the zone, right? So let me get rid of this here. So and that was to measure half gap, and we obviously blew right through half gap once we rolled over. Okay, so this is the first sign of weakness. The second clue that we called for in this morning's pre-market open, right, was that after 9:30 in the morning, we've had consistent slow rotations and grinds up, right? And we generally didn't get a move again in one direction or the other until after 12:30 Central Time, 1 o'clock, somewhere in that range. And that's exactly what we got, was this slow grind up. And so anyone who tried to stay short, right, they nailed it. They got the right. We were going to roll over today, but even if you shorted it perfectly right, you got ground up and you most likely ended up losing money because you would have, most traders would have hit a stop. Instead, the preferable way was, if you look, this was 1807 was the high right here. 1807, we were talking about getting a good rotation of at least 6 points. Well, from 1807, pitch you down to 1801, right? And the pre-market high was 1808 and 3/4 or 1807 and 3/4, okay? So either way, right into the back of the zone, you were pushing somewhere in here. I will go ahead and annotate it, draw it. Somewhere in this area, you were looking at 6 to 7 points of rotation down, depending if you're working off overnight highs or intraday highs, okay? This provided an excellent rotation, an excellent entry. A 2-point stop behind the back of the zone is what most of my clients and I use, for that matter, right? And this gave a beautiful rotation. You easily got your 2 points, right? If you took the back of the zone, that puts you at 1801 and 3/4. Let's just call it 1802, right? So by the time you got up to 1804, which was right here, it didn't take any time whatsoever. You had your 2 points in the bag. And then depending on how many contracts you trade, you could have either scaled half and left a trailer. And even if you move stop up to break even, you're able to carry the trade all the way up for a beautiful rotation into the white zone. And if we look at the white zone, right, the zones themselves, without anything else, if you had nothing else on your screen, you had no idea about rotation or anything else, the zones themselves provide excellent trade location. First time into the zone right here, and we did get rejection, although not for 2 points, right? And if you're a little patient and you let it push up, right? So 1801 was our low. 6 points put us at 1807. We weren't in the zone, so I'm not looking to automatically take a trade on that rotation. I'm looking to take a trade with a good rotation up and at or into the zone. This entire thing, right? This entire area consists of the zone. So anywhere in here is good trade location. The key differentiator is two things. How big is your rotation often determines where I want to take the trade. And the second part is the stop is usually 2 points behind the zone. So financially, you have to look. The price of the trade is 2 points behind the zone. The stop that you can afford is a different thing, right? If you can only afford a 2-point stop, then you are forced to look for trade location at the back of the zone, okay? If you can take 3 points, middle of the zone is acceptable. If you can take 4 points, the front of the zone, right, will provide you an opportunity for the highest number of trades, assuming the trade location and the rotation is, the trade location is good, the rotation is good, and the first time into the zone, okay? So obviously, if you shorted the front or the middle, you were able to achieve your 2 points by 1806 at the latest, right? 1805.50 at the latest. And if you took the middle, obviously you were trading approximately 1808.50, so 1806.50 would have been your first 2 points. Again, you could have moved stops to break even if you don't want to take any risk whatsoever on the trade, on the second half of your trade. And you had a beautiful trade to the downside, potential 10-point trade to the downside. It's a lot of money. $500 a contract is about as much as you can hope for, right? So, and I'm not even looking at tick divergence today. I did not look, and the reason why was tick was totally screwed up today. I have no idea what was going on there, but right in here earlier today, we had a 900 down tick, and we got almost no rotation to the downside, which was bizarre. And when that happens, it's rare, but I totally disregarded pick at that point. So let's go look at what happened later in the day. I come in, and if we look on stuff, I had mentioned that we were in balance, so it was going to be slow and grindy, right? Number one, which meant you had to have patience. If you took the trade in this area, this is the hardest time of day to take a trade because of all the chop that's involved here, right? It was no heat, but there was a ton of chop involved. Furthermore, because of that chop cyclically, it causes traders to tend to make errors in patience. It takes so long that they'll tend to take a half a point or a point trade, whereas prior they had obviously they had a potential 10-point trade on their hands, right? So it can make discipline very difficult when you have this going on. So in the afternoon, I had mentioned I was on the way back, and I tweeted out here. I know on the private stream that if we look, where do we get the annotation here? I tweeted out somewhere in here that the market was looking heavy, right? And that we still had plenty of room for a downside break. And I'd mentioned that earlier when we were up in this area, was that we only had a 7-point range. There was still room for extension. So I'm adding all of these things up, and I'm still looking for, hey, is there a potential for a move? The other thing that I'm looking at is we've been unable to break higher for 4 days in a row. I know I forgot to put that connection. Despite the NASDAQ consistently making new highs for the last 5 days, NQ has been unable to. We made one attempt at new highs. ES, we made an attempt at new highs. And then when we were unable to hold that, right, we kept falling back into balance. That's a clue to me that there's some weakness. Now, it was only consolidation, and we certainly could still go and break to new highs. There's nothing stopping us from doing that. But for now, I have to go with the assumption that this is going to put in a top, right? And I'm going to, at the very least, need to see us move back into this 1807 area and hold above and close above 1807, which we've yet to see. Okay, so moving on into the afternoon. I did not get a setup to the short side unless you took the short out of the white zone. There was no setup. Okay, and so someone asked me earlier, why isn't this area? Why wasn't this area a good area to short? And the reason for that was that even though it looked heavy, you're consolidating above a zone. If you took the trade here, right, the only way to find out if this trade would work would be to put a stop 2 points behind the white zone. Now, of course, reasonably, you could have put a 2-point stop here, and you would have ended up making very nice money. The question is, if you do that 10 times in a row, right, how many times will that trade pay you? And the answer is probably about 50% of the time. The problem is, for most traders, a 50% trade over time will whittle down your account and will not provide a profitable trade. In addition, for traders that have difficulty with anxiety, discipline, and staying on plan, right? Taking a trade here, you are on edge as to which way it's going to break. And any little fake, like right here when we fake to the upside, right, could be enough to make you cover. Okay? So again, the best trade would have been a rotation back up, perhaps into the bottom of the white zone. Also, you hear me stress first time into the white zone is the most critical area, right? And this is a perfect example. We got a rotation down. This was the second time in the day that we got a rotation into this 1801 and 3/4 to 1803 and 3/4 zone, right? And this break right here is exactly what the concern is with the second move into the zone. And then I tweeted at the end of the day, while I'm not looking for a contra trade, the zones are still valid, right? And obviously we found responsive buyers right here. They weren't able to push it up. I would expect a backside test of this 1803, 1804 area overnight, okay? And then taking a quick look at NQ in the afternoon, I took 2 trades in NQ today. And let me show you what those were. Okay, so let's erase this stuff. Okay, so I was looking at a couple of things. This morning, NQ was unable to sustain new highs, right? And the private Twitter stream, which I sent to my clients, I had pointed out that if we closed back below this 1795 area was really where I was concerned. Okay, we'd already come down and tested. This is the prior structure right here. We came down and tested. We were unable to get gap fill. But I pointed out, if we close back below 34.95, that would set up a trap trade, right? And sure enough, we closed below 34.95. We had a backside test, took no heat. I took a short at 34.94, which was extremely aggressive, but it was an appropriate setup for a trap trade. And then obviously what happens in the trap trade is we push to the other side of the range, and that's exactly what we did. And then we went on, and I posted this on StockTwits and Twitter, that we went to consolidation phase, right? And that basically a break above or a break below would offer us an opportunity for a push. So here was the deal on this trade. This is the trade I took right here at the very end of the day. And so the clues that told me this was going to be a valid trade was, first of all, we had failed to make a break above, right? Essentially, we retrapped the longs right here, okay? And the other clue that told me that we had a possible break was when we had this move here to the downside, right? It kind of gave me a heads up that we were possibly going to break lower. Again, this is simply a clue as opposed to acting on it, right? And this is the exact reason why most of the time, right, particularly late in the day, I will not chase. And the exact reason why I did not take a trade in ES was that while this was correct, this ended up being, right, a profitable trade at the end of the day, right? But you took an amazing amount of heat. In either case, either this trade here or this trade location right here, right? If you had simply waited for a nice rotation up, right, and you took it into the teeth of this structure right here, right, this was the first actual test of the breakdown structure occurred right here, okay, you actually had a beautiful trade location. Now, I wasn't at home when this occurred, and so I was not able to take the trade. I didn't call it out. I had actually didn't even know it was occurring, right? But we then came down a second time, and this is a lower low on a closing basis on a 5 minutes, excuse me, on a 700 tick chart. I'm pretty sure it was also on a 5 minute. And this is now a lower low, right? So on this rotation back up, this is a rotation from 3480, let's call it 3482, right? All the way up to 3490, which was the bottom of this structure now, right? We'd come up and we tested the backside here, broke down, and the market is constantly following a pattern of breakdown, retest, right? So let's get rid of this so you can see that pattern. Come in here, okay? Here is the breakdown, right? We tried to retest into the area, but we didn't retest. We got right here, okay? And then we were able to, once we came in here, push lower. This is a retest of this breakdown right here. I hope that makes sense. I know I'm drawing pictures all over the place. And then we obviously rolled to the downside. This gave you a beautiful trade, 34.90 down to 34.80. I covered 10 at 34.80, and I covered the last part after market at 34.84. It was a beautiful trade with a nice rotation up. I really wish ES had given me a rotation up, but it was the weaker of the two today by far. So again, the focus was, and we're going to wrap this up here in just a minute, the focus was entirely on trade location and trade rotation. And even without zones, right? Even if I didn't publish the zones every morning, right? You can still go back in and figure out this is structure, this is a breakdown, this is a retest. This is basic, I'm not giving away any trade secrets. This is in every technical analysis book on the face of the earth. Breakdown, retest, failure, retest of the failure, right? And then we're showing weaknesses. I always look at this as kind of a hernia, right, in the market. We finally kind of tore out of the balance area here, came back in. It's not bad the first time. Second time got a little worse, and then third time required an operation. So I don't know if that's an appropriate way to look at it, but that's kind of how I was looking at it today. And that's what I have for today, guys. I certainly hope that was helpful. I'll leave it open for any questions that anyone has. This is the time to ask them, and you can ask questions, by the way. Excuse me. You can ask the question right here. If you'll send them like this, I'll be able to see the questions, and I can respond to y'all appropriately. Or you can hit me on Skype for those of you that are my clients. You're welcome to ask. I'll leave the floor open for 5 minutes for any questions. And if we have none, we will just move on to tomorrow. So I'll give it a minute here.